Today, I'm going to be reading Chapter 5 of Ground Zero by Alan Grass. This chapter is titled Trapped. The elevator kept sliding down, and not the way it was built to. Brandon could feel how wrong it was in the pit of his stomach. From the horrified looks on their faces, the other passengers in the elevator felt it too. "Hit the emergency stop button," said the blonde woman. Said. Nobody moved. The elevator kept sliding. Above them, something groaned sickeningly. "Hit the emergency stop," the woman cried. There was a loud clung above them, and the floor of the car dropped like a stone. Brandon's heart jumped into his throat, and he lunged for the control panel and slapped the red stop button. The elevator's emergency brakes grabbed hold with a squeal, and the car jolted to a stop. Everyone tumbled to the ground, and then they were still. Brandon's breath came fast and hard, and he panted with fear. What had just happened? Something smelled like it was burning, but not like a kitchen fire. It was like chemical tinge to it, like when you squirted lighter fluid on a burning charcoal in a grill. The passengers stirred and helped each other up to their feet. Brandon's legs were trembling so much he almost couldn't stand. "What the heck just happened?" said the big man in the blue blazer asked. The big man in the blue blazer asked. None of them had an answer. "I rode on a hurricane bell in this tower in '76, said Shavender, the windows on the world worker. During the hurricane, the towers swayed back and forth 5 yards away from each other. But it was nothing like that. The silver-haired man clutched at the buttons on his shirt. "Good God, if this thing fell over, it'd reach all the way to Chinatown." Brandon blanched. "The Twin Towers fall over?" "That's not helping," the woman said. "Try the phone." There was an emergency phone behind a metal panel, and Shavender pressed the call button and waited. "Yes, hello," he said after a minute. And Brandon relaxed. If somebody knew they were in the elevator, they could come rescue them. "Yes, something happened. We're stuck on around the 85th floor. Brandon heard a calm voice on the other end answering back. "He says there's some kind of problem on the 91st floor." Shavender told the other passengers. "An explosion or something," he says. "Hello? Hello? Are you there?" He's gone. An explosion, Brandon thought. What could have exploded? The big man took away the phone from Shavender and pressed the call button again. He shook his head. The line's dead. Black smoke crept through the seams at the top of the elevator, and Brandon felt a bead of sweat roll down his back. Smoke? Was there a fire? It was getting really hot, too. "We've got to get out of here." The silver-haired man cried. "Stay cool," the woman told him. She dug a cell around in her briefcase and flipped it open. But she couldn't get a signal. Nobody else had a cell phone to try. They were trapped and cut off from the rest of the world. Brandon put his head in his hands and tried not to cry. He was scared and separated from the person he'd relied on most, his dad. "It's you and me against the world, Brandon. This is how we survive." But how was Brandon supposed to survive without him? Smoke tickled the back of Brandon's throat, and he coughed. The old man coughed too, longer and harder. Brandon could now see the black smoke among them, curling and twisting like something alive. The big man pulled the cloth napkins from the wreckage of the cart. "Here, wrap these around your faces," he said. "Dab them in some water first," Shavender said. The overturned pitcher had a little water left in it, and he wet the napkins and handed them out. Brandon tied his napkin around his mouth and took a deep breath. It was still hard to breathe, but the napkin filtered out most of the smoke. The old man kept coughing, though, even with a damp napkin to help. They all sat down on the floor to get as far away from the smoke as they could and went around introducing themselves. The blonde woman's name was Marini, and she was a stockbroker from Connecticut. Shavender was born in New Delhi, India, and lived in Queens. He had worked at Windows on the World since it opened in 1976. The old man's name was Stephen. He was an investment broker who worked on the 101st floor and lived in the Upper West Side of Manhattan. He'd been a New Yorker all his life. The big man's name was Mike, and he lived in New Jersey. He was in the tower to the interview for an insurance job. "I'm Brandon," Brandon said when it was his turn. It was weird talking to a bunch of grown-ups like he was one of them. But in a way, he was. It didn't matter whether they were young or old, or where they were from, they all stuck in the same bad situation together. "Wait, you're Leo Chavez's kid, aren't you?" Shavender said. Brandon nodded. There was no sense of hiding it now. Getting in trouble with his father was the least of his worries. "What do you think that sound was?" Mike asked. "That snapping sound right before the kid hit the stop button. Do you think it was an elevator cable?" Nobody answered him. So far, no one seemed to be outright panicked. But Brandon realized that he was shaking and couldn't make himself stop. He wished he could reach his dad. If only I hadn't gone off on my own, Brandon thought. And all for some stupid Wolverine gloves. What a fool he had been. And now he was going to choke to death inside this metal coffin. "Kid, you with us?" It was Mike. He and the others were looking at Brandon like they'd asked him something when he wasn't listening. "We're going to try to get you out of here," Mike told him. "Can I lift you up so you can try the ceiling?" Brandon agreed, and Mike boosted him up onto his shoulders. The smoke was heavier up there, and Brandon held his breath. He pushed and pounded on every inch of the ceiling, but nothing budged. "Let's see if we can get the doors open instead," Shavender said. He and Mike put their palms on the flat, shiny metal doors of the elevator and pulled. And the doors opened a crack. Brandon felt a tiny thrill. Maybe they were going to get out of here after all. He and Marani jumped up in to help. Together, the four of them pulled the elevator doors wide, and Shavender jammed a metal serving tray between the doors to keep them open. Brandon stepped back, expecting to see a hallway or at least part of one. Instead, there was nothing but an unpainted gray wall with the number 85 written on it in pencil. They were at the 85th floor, but they couldn't exit onto it. Of course, Brandon realized, the local becomes an express after the 75th floor. There were no exits from the elevator until a sky lobby far below them on the 78th floor, which meant they were trapped, and the smoke and heat was getting worse. "It's drywall," Mike said. "Sheetrock. It's the stuff they make walls out of. Maybe we can burst our way out of here," said Marnie. Mike lifted a big foot and kicked the wall. Thwack! Brandon leaned in close. All the kick had done was leave a footprint. Mike waved everyone back, lowered his shoulder, and ran full tilt at the wall. Thunk! Nothing happened to the wall, but the elevator shuddered and jerked around another half a foot. Brandon thought he was going to have a heart attack. "Let's not do that again," Stefan says. "Well, excuse me for trying to save our lives," Mike snapped. Everyone started yelling at each other, and Stephen started coughing and couldn't stop. The smoke was getting worse, and now the elevator felt like a sauna. Brandon plucked a butter knife out of the wreckage from the serving cart and held it up triumphantly. "What about this?" he cried. Everyone stopped arguing and stared. "Yeah, that's good. That could work," Mike said, and Brandon felt a small flush of pride. Mike took a knife and hacked at the sheetrock. A tiny bit of drywall crumbled into dust and rained down on the carpet, leaving a divot in the wall. "There we go," Mike said. He pulled out his blazer and loosened his tie, and went back to hacking at the wall. Shavender grabbed a spatula like a serving utensil from the floor, and used that on the hole too, taking turns with Mike. When they got tired, Maroney and Brandon took turns. It was exhausting work. They didn't ask Stephen to help, though. He didn't offer. He was having enough trouble breathing already. Smoke steamed in through every crack in every seam now, and something up above them popped and groaned. Stephen tried the elevator phone again, but there was no answer. What was going on here? Where was everyone? "We're all going to die here," Stephen wheezed. "We're not going to die," Marnie said, but it didn't sound like she was believing it. Brandon's arm shook, and he could barely aim straight when he whacked at the hole. How could he be trapped without his dad? Just this morning they had been together in another elevator. Why hadn't that happened then, when they could have helped each other? Mike and Shavender took over, steadily chipping away at the wall. There was one layer of drywall. They discovered there was three. There wasn't one layer of drywall. They discovered there was three. But working together, the elevator passengers managed to carve, yank, and kick a pizza-sized hole in the wall. None of them could fit through it, though, except for Brandon. Go, young man, go, Shavender told him. But we don't even know where it leads, said Brandon. The space beyond the hole was dark and empty. Who cares, as long as it's not in here, said Maroney. Brandon couldn't argue with that. He took a deep breath of wet, smoky air. With Mike and Shavender's help, he climbed out into the unknown. Thank you for listening. That's all for today.